Hi, my name is Sadie Sharp, and you are listening to Sharp Shares, the weekly blog which talks about everything which impacts upon us, sometimes hold us back, sometimes propels us forward, but nonetheless, it's part of the fabric of who we are as human beings. And I wanted to create a space that enabled us to share all of those things and maybe how they impact upon us all differently. So we talk about everything from life to work to relationships and charity and education and everything in between. Now, this week's vlog is actually on the concept of something called post-traumatic development or post-traumatic growth, and the concept of emotional resilience and how maybe trauma impacts upon different types of people differently, and some move forward and some maybe are held back. So I had a really interesting conversation with a lady called Julie Mattinson, who is a trained psychotherapist and a director of a local mental health charity called Ipsum. And she had some amazing things to say around what trauma is, how it affects different types of people, and actually how do we maybe leverage some of those trauma lessons to help us grow rather than hold us back. Now, Julie, I came across the concept post-traumatic growth only a couple of weeks ago. And for me, it very beautifully put into 3 words what I essentially spent 40,000 words trying to explain when I was writing my book. And about how, shit happens to us in life, and for the majority of us it leaves a mark. It has an impact. It affects the way we behave and the way we feel and what we do and the choices we make and all of those sorts of things. And I think what was interesting for me was actually where I'd had a number of sort of traumatic events when I was younger, in my sort of teens and 20s. I didn't deal with them. I stuck them in a box and I put a padlock on that box and I put another box on top of that box. And when the cracks started to show, I'd fill them with polyfiller. And when the polyfiller cracked, then I put more polyfiller on top. And then I ended up having a breakdown at age 31. So what was, I guess, a real lesson for me was the fact that I didn't deal with my trauma at the time. It then led to a bigger trauma. But as much as I wouldn't obviously recommend having a breakdown, when I look back at that event in my life, it was one of the pivotal turning points around some of the things that I do and part of who I am today. And as I say, as much as I wouldn't recommend it as an experience for people, I genuinely believe it was the best thing that could have happened to me, because it was a painful event, it was a painful trauma, but it fundamentally repositioned how I saw myself and my life and the choices I was making as a result of some of the stuff I didn't deal with. So it took me to kind of fall off that cliff to ask myself those questions. But as a result of that, I've gone on to completely redesign my life, and I'm doing things I never would have thought I would have done. And I feel like I've got the emotional bandwidth to be able to do those things really well, whereas before I was just surviving. So, Julie, I guess for you, what would be really interesting is to find out, in your professional opinion, like, what is trauma? How does it impact upon different people differently? How do those things kind of hold us back? How do they impact upon us? And what can we do about it so we maybe move away from trauma injury through to traumatic growth?
If you take a minibus and say we're on a minibus, you and I, or in a car together, or we've got a minibus full of friends and we're all going on a journey and we have a car accident. We all survive it, but it was a pretty significant accident. It wasn't just a little bump and someone had whiplash, and it was pretty scary. Even the only common denominator in that will be that we were all in the same accident, on the same bus or in the same car. That's the only common thing, is that actually that's what we've got in common. That's it. Our experiences will be completely different, and we will relay them when we tell people completely differently. So I might say, oh my God, I am never going in a car. I'm never going in a minibus again. Oh my God, I nearly died. I'm not doing that again. I'm going to get a taxi. That was ridiculous. And you might say, thank goodness we were all right. Gosh, that was close, wasn't it? But whew. And you will have a completely different perspective on it than I will, as will everybody else that's in our minibus with us. And it's like COVID-19. The whole world's in it, but every one of us, and there's an awful lot of us in this world, but we'll all be managing it in a completely different way. So it is how we perceive things, and it's how we've sort of built our inner mechanisms to manage trauma. So the minibus is literally one of the ones that I use just to say that the only common thing that we've got is that we were on the same minibus. We're not all going to have the same experience, shared experience. And that's a big mistake when we say, well, you know how I feel, don't you? And you would have felt the same way, because we won't. We completely won't feel the same way as the person that we were next to, and we won't relay the story back in the same way because of our own inner beliefs.
Yeah, I think certainly times like, say, with the whole COVID lockdown and such, and you wouldn't necessarily see that on the surface as a sort of a traumatic event, but actually for some people it would have been, because maybe it's taken away their coping mechanisms with issues, or it's brought things to the surface because all of a sudden they're being forced to slow down. And I think that was definitely one of my reflections when I was pre-breakdown, Sadie, was that I was so busy, kind of, it was one thing, then it was the next stretch, then it was the next stretch. It was running 3 companies and then signing up to go and climb Everest, because that's what you do when you're busy, right? And it was just, I couldn't sit still, because that would then make me reflect and think about what had happened and what I hadn't dealt with and things like that. And I was so stupidly busy. I think had I maybe had that now, and then COVID lockdown came in, and I was forced to sort of sit, and all of this stuff starts bubbling up to the surface, and that probably then, that would, I guess, probably have almost been like a traumatic event, because it created space for all of that stuff I hadn't dealt with. And I would imagine there's a lot of people out there that maybe are starting to kind of use services like yours, because we keep ourselves busy as a distraction, right?
Massively. I mean, and we all do it. We all know people that will be doing it, and we'll recognize it in others, but we won't recognize it in ourselves. And so, I literally will just keep myself busy from day to night, just like when I read your book, it resonated with me there. And I thought, there's so many of us that do that because it's our way of coping with life. And the busier you keep yourself, the less you think about life and what you're running away from. If you understand what I mean, you don't realize you're running away because you keep yourself too busy, and you're too busy for everything that might mean that you sit and stop and talk. And literally, or we'll find a friend that needs us. We've got somebody that really, really needs us right now. And so we're really busy at work, and then this friend needs us because they've got a trauma. So there's something going on in their life, and you have to be the one that's there for them.
Easier to fix somebody else than it is to fix yourself, right?
Yeah, let's just fix somebody else. Let's not look at ourselves. Let's just look at what is happening for somebody else, because, hey, their needs are greater than mine, and I'm working, then I'm focusing on them. So I'm okay. I'm absolutely okay, because I'm managing. But actually, all you're doing is avoiding. It's a massive avoidance, massive avoidance. And that's why when people come into counselling, especially people that are contacting us, it's a really scary concept, sitting with somebody for a whole 50 minutes to an hour and actually having to focus on self, focusing on our own being, because it's really, really uncomfortable, which is when you get people say, counselling doesn't work for me, that's rubbish, she's got me talking about this and that.
I
don't need that, I'm sorted. Or talking with somebody and saying, when was the last time that you actually just went for a walk, or went and just completely chilled out, or had a nice relaxing bath? And you'll always get, I don't have time for that kind of thing, that's not my sort of life, I can't do that, I couldn't possibly do that. Do you ever, go to the gym? Do you meet friends for coffee and just sit? And have you got a close friend that you talk to? Oh, no, my friend's too needy, I need to be there for her. There'll always be these reasons why,
not just,
and you totally believe them. Yeah, you totally believe them. You're not trying to kid anybody. That's your life, and you really don't have space or luxury of time to think about yourself. That's their reality.
I think that's almost like a really fine line, isn't it? Because I know that for me, again, as much as I wouldn't recommend having a breakdown, but the kind of the before it got that far, the things that I was investing my energy and efforts into around kind of business and work and partnerships and all that sort of stuff that paid dividends a lot later. But I kind of did it at the expense of myself, because I wasn't looking after myself in the way that I was doing that. It's kind of a like very, very fine line, isn't it? And I kind of kept stepping over it. And then I think I lost track of what a normal level of stress and pressure and all of those sorts of things. So one of my traumas was absolutely self-inflicted, because I pushed so hard I broke myself. Yeah. And it is a very fine line, isn't it, around part of who I am is I will always stretch. I will always be looking for the next thing and be pushing, and I will always be busy. Yeah. And you don't want to not be you, right? But you need to learn what are your triggers, like what do you start doing when you're getting a bit too close to that line? You either need to pull back or do something to kind of replenish your emotional tank, right? So those sorts of little triggers and sort of like personal nuances that we do. And I know mine is I get snappy at the people I care about, and I'm the most laid back, patient person ultimately. And when I start snapping, and I don't just mean kind of like I'll take the washing up the stairs or whatever, but proper snapping, that for me, I'm like, oh, okay, I need to give myself a bit of a talking to. And that must be something else that some people spot and others don't, right?
Yeah. I mean, I know for me, I can relate to the snapping 100%. For me, I know when there's something, as I would determine renting headspace, well, I don't know until I start eating lots of biscuits. So I start drinking more coffee, because with my coffee, I'll have a biscuit, not all the time, but I do. And I eat loads of biscuits. And I think, hang on a minute, what's going on? And so I make more coffees because I want to have more biscuits. And it's just, what on earth am I doing? And that's one of my tiny triggers. That's a simplistic one. That's a tiny trigger for there's something going on that what is in my awareness somewhere, but I'm ignoring it. I'm really ignoring it, and I'm trying to manage it. And so out comes a biscuit barrel. And that's just a tiny one. That's a tiny one. But we all have things and our own little nuances that we do. But we'll only recognize them if we take time to learn about ourselves, because we can do them without even realizing it. And we can sabotage without really realizing that's what we're doing. Hence, sabotaging our own time and space to take care of ourselves is a really big one. And you just you feel your time, like we've just been talking about, with everybody else and anything else that will do. And the other thing is, this, sorry, it's just coming into my head from your book when you talked about relationships. They were hell bent on not working. You sabotaged them.
Oh yeah, like going on a date with me was like a dating version of Gladiators. I think I would engineer all sorts of little tests and boundaries and all sorts of things, and I made bloody sure they failed every single one of them, because it was easier for me to kind of say, oh, I'm better off investing my time in work, or I was never going to work out anyway because 10 years time XYZ, and you justify, because it's safer to sit into that space of just me rather than starting to rely on other people again, which I hadn't done for such a long time. I guess that's another question for you really, is I think sometimes when you've got trauma, however recent or historical, because it leaves such a mark to varying degrees on kind of you and who you are and your behavior, some of those things you might spot, some of them you don't. And I certainly at the time did not spot that my aversion to trusting other people was manifesting itself in my severe inability to date anybody ever. And I guess that those kind of almost like trauma after effects can look very different in different people, right? So what other kind of things maybe might people be seeing in themselves, or maybe in the other people around them, that almost might be those kind of after effects of unresolved trauma?
Oh, there's lots and lots of things. So you can have an event. So if I could use something, so I'll use something from me. So when I was 11, I was really badly bullied, properly badly bullied. And up until 11, I was really confident, and I thought I knew my own mind. And over the course of a year, I ended up a broken 11-year-old, really, really bullied. Sorted it out. Eventually, the school sorted it out. We don't need to go into the detail of it, but we sorted it out. But a year of my life tested me, completely tested me. I didn't want to go to school. I would have physical symptoms to stop me, because the body will do that too. It will physically stop you. And years later, so, I got over it. And, when I was 11, there wasn't so much around about, we talk about bullying a lot now. We didn't then. And so I had to manage it. There was no counselling. It was just a case of, you okay now? We've sorted it for you. We've changed your situation so you can move forward. But nobody asked me how I felt, which I didn't realise at the time. Moving forward, a few years ago, I had a difficult event in my previous employment, a couple of bosses ago. And what happened was I started to link back without realising what had happened to me when I was 11. And it felt as painful as when I was 11. But it wasn't on the same scale at all. Not at all. But to me, and what it did was it stopped me behaving as I would as an adult. I started to feel like I was 11 again.
Okay.
And it felt really real to me. Now, that's just a personal experience whereby, but because I do what I do for a living and I've had lots of therapy now, I know that.
Yeah.
I know that. But if you don't know that, you can go back to a past experience and then imagine that this experience is the same, because unmet traumas that we've all had traumas in our life, and they don't have to be great big ones. It's whatever upsets us, whatever becomes a traumatic experience to us. And if you don't resolve it, you can always link back to these things with different experiences where others are working with you, or they do something and you behave in a completely different way. You can be linking back to something that happened historically. And because those feelings are all still in there, a little bit toxic, sitting around, that you've thought you've dealt with, but they're in your own little Pandora's box, that I've dealt with that, that's sorted now. The residue of it is still sitting there from how you really felt.
Yeah.
And it can come back.
Yeah.
And does that make sense? So it comes back. And so I ended up, any time I felt, during life, I've noticed it, not just a few years back, if I feel backed into a corner, which isn't necessarily what's really happening, I feel bullied. And that's a big word, but I feel, you're just trying to get your, and my judgments aren't really clear, and they're skewed by my inner feelings from what happened before. Does that make sense?
It does. I think it's one kind of almost like the analogy that I think I made a while ago, is that it's almost like the unresolved trauma is a bit like cooking with a dirty pan. It's like you still get your dish, but you've got like bits of black that keep floating to the top, and
it's keep coming up.
Sour aftertaste, and it will keep coming up. And I think what's interesting is that, looking at that and then trying to analyze maybe your behavior or other people's behaviors in everyday situations, like going to work, right? So some people, even in a previous employment experience, have been bullied. Then in their new employment experience, it might be they're more bullish in putting their point across, so that never happens again. Or they could be quite timid because they're too afraid of raising their head above the parapet, or they just don't, they all of a sudden become very, reticent to talk in meetings because maybe somebody had been belittling them or quite passively aggressive in the past. And it becomes part of who you are. You wouldn't necessarily say that was a trauma, but it's affected you on some level.
It's an effect on us for how we behave. So our foundations and our experiences at whatever age will have an impact on us as we interact with others as we get older. So if you do a bit of self-development, you can recognize it. Now, if you'd have said to me because I was very shy, lack of confidence because of my experiences, if you'd have said to me, do you know what, you're going to be a psychotherapist, you'll talk in front of 700-800 people, you'll do that, I would have gone, no.
Yeah.
No, that's not me. You've got the wrong person. I wouldn't have talked to you like we're talking today. But going and starting to do some personal growth development on yourself, and we are all really, really interesting people, every one of us. We just have to dig deep and have a little look around and make connections. We can't alter our past, but we can learn to live with them, learn by them, don't make the same mistakes as we move forward, and get stronger.
So I think one of the kind of the key turning points then, if we were going to kind of break it down to a very overly simplified aspect, is post-traumatic stress and trauma versus sort of post-traumatic growth and development and learning. That one kind of pivot in the middle, to quote an overused word at the moment, but that one pivot at the moment is around the emotional consciousness. And I think having the courage to stare your shit in the face and say, you know, this happened, this is how it's impacted on me, joining up the dots around this is what happened and this is why I do this now. Do I still want to accept that? And I should say, if I don't want to accept that, I need to find a way of building new pathways and joining new dots so that I go a different way. And I think that was one of the most painful experiences I had after my breakdown, was if I don't push, if I don't stretch, if I don't challenge, then who am I? Like literally, I felt like I'd lost my North Star. I didn't know who I was if I didn't do all of these things, because I'd done it for such a long time to keep myself busy to avoid dealing with my crap. So I think, maybe looking at other people in how do I maybe move from I don't like the way it's still impacting upon me to I'd like to be able to use this as almost like leverage and a springboard to move forward and take those lessons. It is standing in that stillness and staring at what's happened, right?
Exactly that. It's being brave enough and giving yourself permission to stop and start thinking about, who am I? What am I doing? Is this the way I really want to go? Do I want to stay in victim mode, or do I want to go into survivor mode? So, you know, and I use victim mode as in not people are going around saying, oh, poor me, but you get used to being a certain way. You know it, you recognize it, and you're comfortable there. You don't like it, but you know it. It's
the devil, you know.
Yes. And so you stay in that. Do you dare put your head above the parapet and think, this isn't for me, I don't want to do this, I've got aspirations to be, or I want to go and do something else that I've been told, or I don't believe I could do, but I'd like to just try. So I need to dig deep to allow myself to do it. You know, I mean, I worked with a young lady once who'd done really badly at school through a set of circumstances. And eventually she went back to college and then went to uni. But for a few years, it was self-destruct. I'm not clever enough to do what I want to do because that's what I believe. And was on massive self-destruct, and actually a lot of anger coming out. But really, what was really going on was there was a lot of frustration in there, thinking, but I know I can do it. But there was a fear of thinking that. And so through coming in and having that space to talk through what was going on, we were able to look at the triggers, look at connections as to what she was carrying forward from the past. And through just stopping and looking at self, she made these connections herself and thought, I'm going to do it. And she went back to night school and then ended up in college. But scary, really, really scary. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one thing that you mentioned, I just want to cycle back to, is this concept of these things that have happened that you've not necessarily dealt with are almost like renting that emotional headspace. I think is the term that you used. And that really resonates. I think I spent so much of my emotional energy trying to hold down stuff that I didn't want to face, that I think my interactions and my interpersonal relationships and the things I was doing were very sort of surface based. And it was functional, but I wasn't really being, like I didn't really felt like anything I was doing was me. It was kind of almost like a facade, because I felt like I was kind of pretending to keep my shit together. And actually, when I think I let go of all of that, and obviously over a sort of long process of trying to kind of recover and such, I genuinely feel like it's almost like I had a power drain, and now it's like I can step into that full space because I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to hold anything down. And almost like the emotional bandwidth has significantly increased. And I think when I used to be dealing with lots of kind of crap and trauma and holding stuff down, I think I thought I was emotionally resilient because I was coping. You know, I was surviving. I was fine. I will not break, and therefore that's resilience. But actually, I think it was almost emotional apathy. I was blocking feeling anything. It wasn't a positive emotional resilience. It was emotional survival. Whereas I think my brother said when I had my breakdown, it was like I'd been lobotomized, like there was nothing. It was just like a barren emotional landscape. I think it's only when you start to let go of emotional energy trying to hold stuff down that then you can really start to look at the true emotional resilience and how to leverage trauma and take lessons and see yourself differently and those sorts of things. So yeah, I think it really is around letting go of that, I guess almost like you say, the amount of emotional headspace you're letting that stuff take up for you.
All of your energy. So it takes up so much energy holding your Pandora's box down and keeping it locked and not letting anything come out, because the minute something comes out, you're going to have to look at it. And I always liken it to, we've all got our own Pandora's box, and it's got an electric fence around it, and don't you go anywhere near it. But to keep it that way, you've got to use a lot of energy. A lot of energy, because through life we're going to meet people, we're going to have experiences which will, like we've just talked about, will relate back to something of ours, but we need to keep that shut. So we go back in a full circle here to keeping ourselves busy, to busying ourselves looking after other people, because the box might open, and so your energies become full. That's where it all goes to, is keeping yourself busy and keeping the lid on that Pandora's box, because you just don't want to feel that those difficult, the emotional responses that you've tried to shut down, and those experiences that you've locked away because you've dealt with them, but you haven't. So many people say to me, oh yeah, well, I've dealt with that. Now that's been packed away in a box mentally, so I've dealt with that. But what they mean is, no, they haven't dealt with it. They've just jammed it shut and gone, I'm not going to think about that anymore. And that, we need a lot of energy to hold all of these little things down that become one huge thing, a bit like a washing machine. So when it all comes out, you have a breakdown, because all of a sudden you can't, we've all got our stress bucket. And I would say, as long as there's a tap on the bottom of the stress bucket that you can let stress out, you're all right. But the minute it overflows and we go, we can't do anymore, you haven't got any energy left to keep everything at bay. And that's how breakdowns that's a very simplistic way of putting it, but that's how you can have a breakdown, because you cannot cope with any more. And so, like your brother said, you do become sort of lobotomized almost, because you go, whoa.
Same thing in a work context as well, right? A lot of people get stresses, the workload increases, there's fewer people, more work. You've got interpersonal relationships, personal stresses, maybe there's stuff going on at home, and then you've got Fred that keeps sending you war and peace on email, and your manager who's apparently got their own issues, and it just piles on, right? And I think it's those little, almost like put another stone in the stress bucket, put another stone in, and then all of a sudden it's really full. And then when something maybe like COVID-19 hits, and it's like it's just in itself, it's not a trauma, it's not a significant event, but actually it was that final straw that just maybe said, I can't deal with any of this anymore. Your bucket breaks.
Yes. Yeah. And then all of a sudden what COVID-19 has done has made everybody slow down. It's made everybody slow down or stop, because they've had no option. And I appreciate that that's not great for people in work and different things. Obviously, the key workers in NHS haven't stopped. They've gone into override, but it's made a lot of us stop or do things in a different way, which has allowed us the space to think about our lives. And I think when we come out of this lockdown, and I think a lot of people will do things in different ways, because I've spoken to a lot of people, I don't know about you, that have said, I've realised that I can do X, Y, Z completely differently. It's making a massive difference to my life.
Yeah.
No, I know I personally can. I'm doing my job, but actually I'll start at 7:30 in the morning, because I'm a morning person, do a few hours, but then actually I've got half an hour to take my dog out, and I can sit outside, and I can have 10 minutes in the garden. And so I think I said to you the other day, I find myself just sitting looking at the clouds. That's not me. Literally, it was only 10 minutes, but it was just so lovely just to sit and stop and think about my needs. And that's what a lot of us don't give ourselves permission to do, is think about what our needs really are. What was it I need? What do I really need? And we're not very good at asking for it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Because we get so self-sufficient for such a long time. And I think maybe even that, having emotional resilience, it's not always instantaneous either, is it? I mean, everybody goes through that kind of change curve, and it's like, to start with, you're like, oh my God, where's the money coming from? The world's going to end. And it's like, what am I going to do? And I can't go out, I can't earn any money. And it's like, oh, and it just, it for the first, I think, certainly for me, the first 3 weeks, it was almost like that kind of catastrophizing, what am I going to do? And then it's like, oh, well, previous experiences, you know, shit's hit the fan before and it's been all right. I'm sure something will come up. It always does. And you start to kind of trust the process. And now I'm starting to think, well, actually, you know what? If I can earn a living without having to get properly dressed from the waist down and, you know, spend the rest of my days in slippers and spandex leggings, then perfect. You know, that's what life's about, right? So it is interesting. I think even for me now, even with the kind of the emotional resilience and the lessons and the kind of the foresight and such, I still go through those curves, that ability to see, oh, okay, well, let's leverage this and move forward. Doesn't happen instantly, does it?
No. And it's that thing about time. It's, you know, I watched a lot of my friends actually, when we went into lockdown. I think I knew they were already control freaks, but all of a sudden the control has completely gone. You can't control it. You can't do what situation. No. Yeah. And so, like you say, I think the first 2 or 3 weeks is interesting because it is like almost a transition period for all of us. Yeah. And like you say, you catastrophize, or you think, we'll survive it. We're all in this together. We'll survive it. Again, it goes back to a minibus. What do we think? How do we? What are we all thinking about this? It's all different. And then all of a sudden, you go from 3 weeks. I think it's a good time period, and then you start to think, okay, well, we're still in this. I feel a little bit different now, and actually, I'm finding a new way of being because I've had to. Because I haven't been able to kid anybody that, no, I'm fine, I'm doing this and whatever. I'm actually doing things in a different way and it feels all right. And I think, you know, as I said just now, I don't think we're very good at giving ourselves permission to think about ourselves. We're people pleasers. We're natural people pleasers. And we think, yeah, well, you know, I've got the boss that needs £10 of flesh from me. I'm not going to say I can't do it because then he'll think I'm weak. He'll think I'm not up to the job. And we have our own little dialogues going in our head, which really probably is not what they're thinking. But when we're carrying our own baggage around with us that we haven't dealt with, everything will be about, you know what, yeah, I've got to achieve, I've got to this, I've got to be the best at what I can do, because we're using all of our energy to hold everything down. And hence we go on to, you know, overdrive, you know, like, which, you know, you do, you know, I was interested when I read your book. I thought, that's exactly right. And that's going to resonate with so many people, including myself. And so this COVID-19 has actually made everybody slow down, reassess life, reassess how they work, and I'm talking generally here. You know, I think we're all going to have to change. But do you know what? I've spoken to people that in the first 3 weeks were in the catastrophizing area that are now going, actually, I'm going to do it this way, and I've actually realised I can do this, and actually I'm going for walks. Nobody had any choice, did they, but to stop for the first 3 weeks. And as uncomfortable as it can be for people, just starting to actually take a chance on self is huge. And we can learn so much from a situation like this, which goes back to the positive effects.
Which is the emotional consciousness and sort of self-reflection and how you...
Because you have to.
Yeah, you can choose how you see a situation, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So you choose how you look at it. And I think, you know, a lot of people are in lockdown together and actually having conversations, talking about things, you know, instead of one in the door, one out the door, or both coming in at the same time. One walks the dog, one cooks supper, watch a bit of telly, go to bed. now all of a sudden there's conversations going on. How many Zoom quizzes are you in? How many, people all
And I'm still crap at quizzes. It's not improved my performance on quizzes just because it's online, but I'm doing them nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm on a winning streak actually. We're doing Zoom quizzes with some friends, and they're great fun. But all of a sudden, we realise how important interaction with others is, and actually, it's important. But we also like. I mean, I think I'm talking about me now. It's nice to have interaction with other people, and it's also nice now. I've realised to have a little bit of space for me. I like to just sit now, which was never something that I did. Just sort of, especially at the moment with the weather like it is, it's amazing to be able to just sit outside and just stop for a minute. I'm just as productive, probably more actually. I'm more productive now than I was before COVID, and yet I was much busier.
Yeah, I think it's like I say, it's giving yourself that time to reflect and almost analyze, right? So as much as something can be painful, doesn't mean that it can't have some kind of a lesson or a silver lining. You can't take something positive from it. So I know certainly a lot of the kind of the stuff that happened to me in the past, as much as again you wouldn't necessarily choose to repeat those kind of traumatic instances, you can say actually, because I was able to survive that, I had the emotional kind of resilience and tenacity to then go on and do bigger things because I could survive that more tricky landscape, whereas I maybe wouldn't have been able to do it had I not had that experience. So, and even with the COVID stuff, like you say, it's about trying to say, well, I'm not comfortable, I don't like it, I probably wouldn't have chosen it, but I can still take something from it and say, although it's not ideal, sometimes we're pushed into decisions we should have taken for ourselves as such. Like redundancy, yes, absolutely, it's not something that environment people would wish for, but it's like, well, actually it can lead to better things, or it can lead to different things. So yeah, I think that process of emotional consciousness and stopping, standing and looking back at yourself is definitely one of those kind of key turning points to go from sort of trauma to traumatic growth, right?
Yeah, and that's, there is a fine line between the two, like we say. So one person is going to say, if they're made redundant, using your example, might think, oh, well, that's it, I'm going to have to go on the dole now. I'm not going to get another job. Who's going to employ me? Da, 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 da. Oh my God, it would happen to me, wouldn't it? Whereas somebody else is going to go, okay, so that's an ending. Maybe there's a new beginning around the corner. I've always fancied doing X, Y, or Z, or I could do a college course in the evening because I want to be a plumber, or I want to do, I'm going to do something different. So, and that's the difference between the two. There's just a fine line between the two as to how we respond to a set of circumstances.
Okay. So I guess kind of sort of bringing things back in together then with the concept of post-traumatic damage and post-traumatic growth. The difference between the two, and maybe some kind of tactics or tools or sort of key reflection points maybe. One is definitely around recognizing how much of your emotional energy you're spending keeping down the trauma stuff because you're not dealing with it, and therefore to grow you need emotional energy. And if all your emotional energy is invested in holding down the stuff you don't want to look at, then actually it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to grow. That sounds like it's definitely one of those key components to sort of go, rather than go that way, going this way. And I guess one of the others then is almost a choice of mindset. It might be really deeply ingrained to say, oh my God, and catastrophizing and things like that, but actually to almost like stretch yourself and say, what can I take out of this? Or what could I do? What lessons could I learn? Albeit maybe further down the line and looking back. You don't have to do that immediately if you're kind of really plugged into it, but really looking for some of those lessons and the opportunities, and that actually had it not been for that, I probably wouldn't have done X, Y, Z or whatever now to a certain extent. I think one thing I've always done is when I've tried to step into a new space or I guess maybe challenge my thinking, I can't do that when it's just me. It's like it's like a closed shop box, right? But when you start to introduce other people and other views, or other people maybe who've gone through similar things and they've come out the other end, or people who challenge the way you look at life and relationships and those habits, that actually I think it expands the way you see yourself and the world around you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it will do. You literally, you expand your horizons almost, and it's if you stick around like-minded people that act in the way you do, which is also something that we can do without even realizing it, because it's where we feel safe.
Yeah.
When you start to literally look to other people and learn how they're doing things, you develop your more interpersonal skills of your own. So you start to look at the world in a different way, and you think, well, actually, I would have done it that way. But they're doing it like that. And it's a way of, you start to learn different ways of being. It's literally just thinking, and instead of sort of the fear, fight, flight, what am I going to do? It's just, hold on a minute, let's just stop a minute. What am I good at? What do I enjoy? Did I really like doing that job? What are the benefits of, I used to making it up. Well, I used to travel to Swindon. I used to travel to Bristol. Okay, well, I've been made redundant, so I can't do that now. Maybe I could work from home. Maybe what do I like doing? It's just starting to reflect on the things that you might have forgotten you enjoy, and could actually develop into a concept that you took forward. Even if it was just leisure, not necessarily losing your job, it could be something that a hobby or a craft that you had. That all helps with our own. It's very therapeutic and calming, and gives us time, because our mind's not still focusing on work or other issues. We focus on what we're doing, and we enjoy it. So it's therapeutic, and that makes a massive difference to our mindset as well.
Like topping up your tank, topping up your emotional.
Absolutely. So you're topping up that tank, which is all your positive energies, and it makes you feel completely different, and it actually makes you think in a different way.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is just kind of appreciating your personal quirks. Like say, we are all the impact of the experiences that we've had, good, bad, or indifferent, right? And I think even for me, it's recognizing I still do some things. I'm not going to stop doing them, and it's probably because of that other stuff that happened. Yeah. But actually, it's like for me, even now, if I can't kind of I'll have a certain element of control around my environment, then I'll end up shopping. It's like click, basket, because that for me, it's like, well, I can control that's setting something up, or that's me choosing to do something rather than just being a passenger in the situation. But I do that, but I recognize it, so it doesn't become a problem most of the time. But you recognize it, so you know what, I'm not going to stop. It's me. Yeah, it might have kind of a legacy in something that wasn't particularly positive, but actually, you know what, I don't mind that bit about me, and it's here to stay. It just maybe needs to be reined in every now and then.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. It's interesting. It's about liking yourself. We've all got our shadow side. We've all got bits about ourselves we don't like. Of course we have. Or we've got bits of ourselves that frustrate us, but it's who we are. Otherwise, what boring world it would be if we were all the same. Wouldn't it? I mean, a lovely little story that I'll share with you. I've worked with many counsellors, and I worked with a very seasoned counsellor for many years. And she walked into my office one day, very thoughtful, and she'd been busy all day. And I said, "Are you all right?" She said, I should speak for a minute. And I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "I've just discovered part of my personality that I don't like very much. I need to go away and think about it." And she turned around and walked out. I was like, oh, okay. And this lady was in her sort of late 60s, and she's been counselling, she's a psychotherapist for years. And it was just the way she walked in. It was almost like a revelation. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I don't know what it was, but it just, again, we're always learning. And as long as, saying something like that, well, I don't like that bit about myself. There was no hang up about it, whatever. It was like, I need to go away and investigate that bit. Why was I like that? And not giving herself a hard time, or it was just very reflectful. And that's what we can do if we trust ourselves, and any events we've had in our past which have led to our foundations. Sometimes we can reprogram ourselves, because what others told us isn't the truth, and we are worthy and we are valued, and we can turn things into a positive. Yeah. So we can turn trauma into a positive effect on us, and it can happen for absolutely anybody. You just have to surround yourself, like you said earlier, with people that think differently to us, and show us that there is another way, instead of creating a lot of peers around us that are all very similar, or we can relate to, and we feel comfortable sitting in that place. There'll be no challenge. Whereas if we start to liken ourselves and be with other people that will challenge some of the things that we say, and we will have to challenge our own thought processes because we want to achieve something, and this is going to be out of our comfort zone. It's so healthy. It's so healthy. You know, what's it? Definition of madness is doing everything the same and expecting it to change.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. And so, you know, having a little bit of confidence in ourselves, which I appreciate sometimes, you know, you will need therapy for, or just a really good mate would do, that has got your best interest at heart, and to be able to have some empathy shown when actually you do see everything from a dark place. And if you've got friends like that, just remember there'll be reasons for that, and you might be the person that can help show the way in a different way.
Yeah, you can sit inside trauma, or you can sit outside helping other people deal with that, right?
You can actually sort of say, yeah, I hear you saying that, but if you thought about it this way.
Yep. So, talking of madness, Julie, thank you so much for all of
I know I'm mad, Sadie, I know.
Well, no, I tell you what, I'm going to challenge that observation now. So, what I wanted to do with all of these chats is absolutely provide a space to have some of those conversations about the meaty things that maybe we kind of try and avoid, or the things that hold us back. But it's also recognizing that life is too serious most of the time. So I'm going to ask you a question now, which was the best and the worst question I've ever been asked on speed dating.
Oh my God.
I know, right? So bear with me on this one. If you were going to be a cake or a biscuit, so you could be either, what type would you be and why?
A cake or a biscuit. Okay.
Yeah, cake or a biscuit. You can have either, but a specific type, and you need to know why. And the world is listening to your rationale.
Oh, lovely. Okay, so the cake that's coming into my head immediately is a carrot cake, because firstly I like making them. And I suppose if I analysed that, it would be, because it insinuates it's quite a healthy option, being a carrot cake. But inside my cake, I have bananas and I have nuts, which I am completely nuts on the inside. I like a bit of fun, and I think it's quite a nice textured cake with lots of surprises. And so I think, yeah, I'd be a carrot cake because they're quite nice. There's a lot of substance to them. I don't know what I could say to that.
Nope, that's fine. Absolutely perfect. So you heard it here first from a trained psychotherapist that it's okay to be a little bit nuts, basically.
It is.
Yes.
It's what keeps us sane.
So much more fun when you're a little bit nuts. So don't lose that. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Julie. It's been an absolute pleasure for our very first vlog. This has been Sharp Shares, and this is a weekly vlog talking about everything from life, work, charity, education, and everything in between. So please do join us for the next weekly vlogs. And thank you so much. And hopefully I will speak to you all soon. Thank you. Bye.